Aye.
Those opposed?
It was Terry and
Or Archie. Attached to the packet were the minutes of the April 12th meeting as well as the May 10th meeting. I'll take comments on either. Any comments on any minutes? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve the April 12th meeting minutes. So.
Second.
Second. Any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the May 10th meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Richie. Jesse.
Just kidding.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kevin.
I second it.
Yep, perfect. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? None, motion carries. Okay. Open portion of the meeting. Do we have anybody online?
we do not have anyone.
Nobody in the room? Nobody.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. We'll move into authority business and action items. First item is review the update on the redevelopment master plan. WSD here to give us the kind of rundown of where we sit. And
Well, I just gave this presentation to most of the people that are in the room.
I'm not sure we need to go through it
Yeah.
line by line. Maybe anything you'd like to highlight or anything that Commissioner would like to discuss.
Sure. I mean, we could throw up the presentation and the plan up.
Yeah,
Have a
the-
discussion about whatever you like, actually.
I guess in particular, I'd be interested in just hearing the general feedback, whether it's business association or any other feedback you've gotten from parties other than the EDA.
It did. It went to planning commission on the 2nd, and they had very positive feedback. So the plan for the benefit of everyone in the room was started. This process was started back in, I think, October of last year, and the task force was established. Members from the planning commission, the city council, the EDA, and staff, and they met monthly between now and between then and April, I guess. Then we started rolling out to the general public. See what we have. So what we have heard from the planning, I haven't heard anything from the general public yet. The planning commission said they were very in favor of it. There's a new planning commission member whose name escapes me, but his one concern is the word, they use the word density. And I let him know that this document is intended for the development community and that it has been a priority of the task force to demonstrate that the increase in density in downtown is a priority. So that's kind of the terminology that developers understand and latch onto. So it was accepted. Commissioner Barton wanted to have some emphasis, clarification on some of the engineering verbiage, which was easy enough to change around. And more emphasis on bicycling infrastructure, not just travel lanes, but also having bike racks or stations. Emphasize some of this. So that's a change. Business association, I tried to speak as loud as I could. It was kind of a big room and I'm not a very great public speaker, but I didn't really get any negative feedback. There wasn't a lot of conversation about the plan itself, but there was questions in terms of are there going to be bike racks in the downtown? Did I start about that? And then there was some question of how can we facilitate getting business generated from the projects that are occurring in the city to local manufacturers, like the sign company, for example. Anybody have any comments?
When you say bike racks, are you talking about bikes that are rented or just a bike
Just a
rack?
place for you
No,
to rent
just
to park your bike.
Okay, got it.
Personal thing.
I can't stand those things laying in everybody's doorstep. You get
Yeah,
on.
those are bike shares.
Yeah.
So it's different terminology. Nobody's talking about that.
Okay, good.
So a couple things I'd like to hit on is kind of timeline and maybe some procedural questions or topics. So I understand this is going to council for final approval mid-July,
Yep, the 19th.
the 19th of July. Again, I think at the outset of updating this document, the intent is to really work to create some alignment in terms of what the vision is for the city between the EDA, planning council, and other interested parties. And the hope is that it'll be used in that fashion moving forward. And so I believe that if officially, even though it's a joint document, I believe the EDA commissioned it. I don't know whether it's required or not, but I think it would be prudent for us to at least take a procedural vote and say, yep, the final document is good before it goes to the council. And we do have a meeting next month, so we have the opportunity to do that next month. I don't know how many people have had the opportunity to kind of review the current draft. And I think the only thing that at this juncture that could potentially change that is we have a public forum, I believe. If anything significant came out of that, there might be some tweaks to it, but I don't know that we need to do it today. I think it'd be more appropriately done next month's meeting, just prior to it going to council. And John and or Ryan, I don't know if we need to vote on it, but I think procedurally it might be helpful to the council to say that the EDA has reviewed the final document, ratified it, or whatever the right language would be. So if I could ask everyone on the EDA to take the time over the next few weeks to dig deep, and if there's not overly concerned about typos and things like that, but anything major that you don't feel comfortable with, let's try to get it to the table, and we'll try to avoid the 11th hour major changes, but make sure that we've all had our opportunity to put the eyes on it. We can bless it and push it off to the council in July. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. And again, this is just kind of again a visioning document. This isn't the comp plan. This isn't, it doesn't necessarily say that what's in here is what's going to happen. It's just it's really just to help everybody kind of understand that where the opportunities are, both internally. By internally, I mean city staff, commissions, etc., the general public. Maybe more importantly, from our perspective, the development community. Where are the opportunities? Whether it's next week or next year or next 5 years. So they got a good sense of whether they should be doing business here or not. So with that, I think when is the open house scheduled?
The city council will look at it at an open meeting, at their workshop next Tuesday, 21st, and then the open house will be before the planning commission on July 7th.
And
And then your meeting would be July 4th.
is there EDA member attendance required or recommended for that open meeting, or is that
It's,
and then all be handled by WSP?
I'll be there. You'll be there.
Do you believe it would be helpful
I think it would be
or
fantastic for anybody from either the EDA and or the task force to be present.
Okay.
I mean, Rick was there this morning. For the business association. So it'd be nice to have somebody.
So if we can try to. Who's the other EDA task force?
Don,
Oh, Don.
Don.
Okay, so we'll talk with Don, and, you know, maybe if he and I can be there at a minimum, but if anybody else wants to attend, it might be helpful, just available to the, you know, if there's any questions from the general public about what do you think, why do you want to kick shifts?
Yeah, that was
Just
the
kidding.
one comment. Just there was.
They want no residential. Get rid of the business.
Oh, that's not the plan.
Well, that's the way it sounds sometimes.
So, we'll try to make available for that public hearing, and then we'll revisit this as an EDA and look to have a vote the Senate for with our recommendation council. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? So if we do have concerns with it, anything within the plan, I think we hammer that out, give everybody a good opportunity to review what is essentially the proposed final here. And, you know, got a month basically to get through it, bring it back to the table, and if there's anything we just cannot swallow, push it back to WSB. Is that good? Okay. Any other questions for WSB? You're welcome to stay. I don't know. Are you on the parklet?
I'm not on it, but I'm interested to see what it is.
Okay. The next item is the follow-up on the joint EDA planning commission meeting. Was there one I didn't go?
there was one, I was going to have Don, take this one, but obviously, yeah, he's not here. I did include the minutes from that meeting so that everyone should be aware of what was discussed. We had great attendance. I know Brandy was there.
Yeah, we just got the sign ordinance.
There were a lot of members from EDA there. Terry was there. Who was there? We had really good attendance from planning as well. Good conversation.
I would just add that, I mean, everything that was discussed, there was kind of an update, and so it was all things you were familiar with. There wasn't anything discussed there that would be a surprise to any of you.
And that's the intent of the meeting, is to limit surprises between the commissions. Okay. Perfect. We'll move on to the proposed parklet. 579 7th Street. Do we have? I think it's part of the development master plan. It's separate.
Well, I did have the two attachments within the packet were the quotes. So that's just the memorandum. And what I wanted to point out, the revised quote, the numbers came in higher, but the difference, as you can see, it was sod rather than seed that was quoted, and irrigation is a must, so that was added. So all in all, it did come up at 93,000. To break down, we're looking at the savings would be $28,000 if Public Works could do the pavement removals and the earthwork. And I'm not sure the direction on this. They noted that there was $24,000 that if the city could pitch in to make some of the purchases, that would save the EDA. That would save the money from the EDA budget, but it would have to come from somewhere. So I think there was a little bit of a communication gap there, or maybe I wasn't involved in how that progressed from the EDA over to the city doing it, which that actually caused an issue with a council member that questioned not getting more than one bid because it's over $20,000. So something to think about, if the city does if we do plan on going that route, we'll have to get multiple bids. And then, so we're looking at 52,000 versus the 75,500, just for a ballpark number to give you an idea of what we're looking at.
Well, I would say, if you look at the difference of the 41,000 and then the 24,000 that, this would presume asking the city to do. I think it's possible you were asking the city to do everything. And that's not really reflected here. Essentially what it comes down to is, I think, $75,000 in cash costs. And then $28,000 of kind of in-kind costs from Public Works doing the work. So, last month we come to you with a $75,000 budget. And your question was, is there anything you can do to get that down to more like 40,000? It went the opposite direction.
So it is noted here what the city would be asked to contribute. So according to this, the asphalt paving, marking, the concrete sidewalk, the sod, and the irrigation is what, oh no, excuse me, that's from the city. So the sod are the things that are left not paid by the city or done. So the work is done by Public Works, and then these are the other fixed item costs.
Okay, so what are the challenges in regards to, let's talk about the pavement removals and the earthwork. Does it make sense to have the city do that?
I think it's all, I don't want to speak for Ron Ritchie. I think it's all seasonal. It's just dependent. I think that's something they can do kind of in downtime.
Kind of fill in with.
Yep. And if in the event that they don't have any downtime, if there are storms that they're dealing with,
Right.
Or whatever, they have their peak times, and it might be hard for them to get to all that.
Okay.
I think they would say they can do it. You just have to give them some time.
The other thing that was mentioned in that email from the commissioner, council member, he questioned whether or not we truly are saving money because Public Works is supposed to be doing their other work versus this. So there was just some questions unanswered.
So if we couldn't go that route, we'd have to create a bid package. Somebody would have to manage that process. Then wait on the number, right? But I believe in order to put it to bid, we at least have to have earmarked funds for the anticipated cost. Or we should.
We should.
Contracted.
Well, I'll just type in one thing here. The city can go in and remove that. But in the soils in North St. Paul, you kind of pump up the water, the groundwater, if you do it wrong. Everybody now is doing it with an excavator. I don't know if the city has one big enough to do that. But you go in and try not to disturb it. If you go in there with loaders, all of a sudden you're sinking down and you just pump that groundwater up, then you're going to have a lot more issues. And if the city does the removals and all that, would I warranty something that somebody else did? If I did it myself, I have my own warranties. But if somebody comes in and disturbs everything and then says, "Oh, here, we want you to pave this,"
Could end up costing more.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
On a small job like that, the removals, the subgrade prep and the
I
asphalt,
understand
that's all
they
one package.
they could probably do that in a day. I don't know how long it would take the city, but if you roll in there with the right machinery and 3-4 trucks, It all depends upon where you're gonna dump it too, you know. Are you gonna take it to the eyesore in
Right.
the city that everybody's after, you know?
I don't know what you're talking.
Me neither.
Or do you have a 5-gallon fuel, you wanna haul it
Right.
20 miles one way, 25 miles one way, that's gonna throw your cost in there.
Do we know, is this I'm suspecting this is just an engineer's estimate. Is that fair to state?
Yeah, and I think the point was made last meeting that the engineer's estimates in your experience have been coming in low.
And we did talk about if the basement is still there, that's an issue.
It's a,
It's there.
I know it is. I watched it.
And we don't know if the floor has been broke up. If the floor's been broke up, it's okay, but if the floor isn't, it's just a swimming pool. And so you take that crust off the top, there you go. So there's a bigger issue there than,
It's pretty, I mean, if you go out there, it's pretty porous. So it's not like a confining layer, you know, it's not like,
oh, you'd be surprised how hard that is.
all right,
That's recycle. They put recycle in there, probably a foot thick, and that'll float a lot of stuff until you take it off.
Any thoughts on best approach here on next step? I mean, I personally think that there'd be value in getting a contractor's estimate on this. If we could do that, I don't know what the rules are on that, but if we could do that without, you know, a public bid, just simply asking for
I don't believe this would have to be bid. I believe that we could get estimates or quotes.
Does that include core sampling to determine if there's water issues below the surface that we're talking about?
probably not. But I don't, you know, we're not putting a structure on it, you know, so.
But it's still, but once you
Yeah,
break
I mean,
it
it's certainly, it's always helpful to know that
if it's broke up, the water goes through.
Right.
You don't have an issue, but if it's not, because we've done a few parking lots back in the day.
Right.
And it's the people that had them done, because it's always a roll that step. We don't have history who did that infill. Someone was us.
I think the city tore it down and my recollection, and I can't say 100%, but I do recall I watched it from my office one day. They broke the thing out. They pushed it off. They never got in and took the basement. I just remember saying
They
to
pushed the
myself,
building into the hole.
Yeah.
Oh, so nice sight on mine. You got all those airvoids down there.
right, so I just recall saying to myself, that's going to be a problem for somebody. And it turned
And now it's
out
ours.
like that. Voila.
Yeah.
Had I known I was sitting in this chair 15
Yeah.
minutes later, I would have stopped.
So the other issue too is, you know, do we want to spend this amount of money? And it could be for only a couple of years.
Yeah, I don't think we do as an EDA personally. I mean, I think that the original intent was to do something to, put a little kind of eye candy on it and just make it look a little better and a little more presentable.
From what I understand is that's going to be about targeting the market,
Is
anything that's more density. So that might be there another, might be there for a long time.
well,
And I was especially with the next building, that never comes up for sale, that we may or may not ever be interested in getting involved in. That would create a larger footprint, which would be, probably a bit more interesting to a developer than this. Like this one. But we have no idea. We're not going to.
So just a out there idea. What about entering into a long-term, I don't know, 5 to 10 year lease with sidewinders and letting them put a patio, they let them do some improvements. And you can write the lease in such a way that if a developer would come, you can give them notice. and, maybe depreciate the value of their improvements and, if you found a developer next year, maybe there's a way for the developer to item out of that, and it's a sliding scale, and it's less than a year. That way, Sidewinders is benefiting from it, and you're getting accomplished what you want to
Just what
accomplish.
it should be. What did that cost?
John, that's an interesting idea. However, I have an opinion about sidewinders and they're willing to invest because that's been an issue. for
Yeah,
some
I have no
years.
idea.
Along with that, I also am very well aware of the cost of a patio. We just did that less than a year ago. I don't see sidewinders looking at that type of investment, that cost, and seeing a recuperation of business to pay for that and make this a viable investment for them. I think they will just say, not interested. If I can, the chairs out on the blacktop that's there, maybe I'll be interested. If I can't, I'm not putting that in for 10 minutes. Yep. you can-
Okay, so-
So how about the thought of, to Tom's point about gaining some understanding of what's on there, because I think that the park concepts that we've seen, I think if something like that goes in, it's gonna get used a lot and probably be pretty well received. And, excuse me, the parklet, we won't call it a park.
Yeah.
I don't know if that term is even right for the parklet, because a parklet is kind of a temporary, smaller, enclosed area that will sit on a parking space. It's removable or whatever. It's kind of,
I think it's important, whatever we call it. I do think that it's important to, at least initially, tag it as temporary. Because, if a higher and better use comes along, we don't want to get into this wrangle of we're gonna pull this apart to put up a building. So, yeah, whatever we call it, what do we call it in the plan? But it is in our, isn't it in the master redevelopment plan?
It is. I don't know that we call it out. Just as we give it a name.
Okay, well, that's good.
Was it green
Or-
space?
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what it is.
And maybe
Open urban space. I should probably say urban space.
And maybe we should, even in the master redevelopment plan, maybe we should tag it as temporary. Just to reserve our rights, if you will. But maybe the better thing to do, just considering where we are at this point in the game of the year. I think our goal was to try to get something in, but with some of the process that we may need to go through, finding the money and everything else, that dog might be dead this year. So,
It's gonna be hard to find a contract.
Yeah.
To do it.
So-
Everybody's loaded
so
up.
maybe maybe a better path at this juncture, and I hate to punt on this, but maybe a better path at this juncture is for the EDA to get quotes to do some borings out there, so we know what the subsurface looks like, and we can do them in a manner that at least would be somewhat informative. I won't say usable should a building ever go there, but they'll certainly be usable for what we're talking about doing. And we can pinpoint where that basement is and figure out whether that's there.
I think if you dig that up without informing the contractor, you're gonna see some huge change orders coming.
Right.
That's gonna be ugly.
And we don't want that. So if we can get if we can get some stuff, engage a firm, get a subsurface report done this year, maybe get some actual contractor estimates as opposed to just an engineer's estimate, no offense to WSD. But get some contractor estimates for early 2023 work. And then, we can ball this thing up. From an EDA standpoint, ideally, push it to council and get it in the CIP for next year.
I think that's a reasonable approach. I would support that.
I don't think that's as much as I'd like it, I don't think that's something that the EDA shouldn't be spending that kind of money on something like that.
Too many unknowns, and that price could
Double.
double.
Right, but I do think it's reasonable and appropriate for the EDA to invest the dollars to do the subsurface report. To understand, how buildable it all is.
You might want to even consider, if nothing else, dig all that crap out of there in the coming years, so it is a parcel that can be sold and used for something in the future. Sure, nobody's gonna come in and, wanna buy a piece of property with that big amount of underneath it.
And depending on what we find in that subsurface report, that could be then an additional opportunity for the EDA, not maybe dissimilar to some of what we did down, or the city did down at Anchor block site to, make it quote unquote pad ready, or, and then we can talk about how that gets done, and maybe that becomes a dead time opportunity for public works to go in there and fix the mistake they made.
We had to do that up at the assisted living.
Yeah.
Up there. Remember, we had to allow them, what was it, 140,000?
Right.
For corrections? Yeah. Did they spend that all? Did we ever get it back? I never.
No, they spent it all. Of course they did.
They spent it all. That's
No, I think, no, we did follow up on that.
okay.
Yeah, and I think that they provided documentation on as to the costs and what have you. So, but no, we didn't get anything back. So to me, that seems like a reasonable approach, unless there's other ideas.
I like that.
I think that is a reasonable approach. Like you said, I definitely support that.
Or somebody wants to talk shit, and see if they'll donate the effort.
I don't know who's in charge over there now.
Yeah. So with that,
So just a couple of thoughts.
sure.
I got an email typed up to Jim Lavelle. I just have to get a send on, asking him who did his soil borings, and to let Lisa know there might be some cost savings since they were out here, a block away and have some data.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it'll be American Engineering or Brown.
And then just to verify, it wouldn't require sealed bids, it would be 2 quotes.
Sure.
Whenever we're so.
So if that's okay, I think that the only thing we need to do is just direct staff to get a couple quotes on doing the moorings and bring it back to the meeting. Then we'll approve that cost and get going on that. And does that make sense?
Okay.
Is there anything we should be doing beyond that in a temporary manner? Yeah,
There's some potholes.
okay. So Lisa, we'll just put a note to ask staff to get quotes on get some subsurface work down there. And we should do it when I don't know who will drive that from the staff side, but when we do that, again, we should do it in mind, not just for the temporary improvements that we've discussed, but do it in with the thought, if a building were to go in there, let's, as long as you got the rig there, let's go to the right depth and get a couple of, what would presumably be kind of building corner type stuff.
The building came right out to the sidewalk.
Yep.
If I remember, but then there was parking spaces behind it.
Yep.
So it didn't go all the way to separate. Right in the middle.
Okay. Any other discussion on that topic? Okay. We have a couple of old business items. Housing study, we have an update. Maxfield still.
They're going slow. I think, like everybody else, they're inundated with work. There's some background information they wanted or something at all. That we did, I just told them we didn't have the staffing to put together for them, so they had to do a little more homework than they normally do. And so Mary Bujo at Axwood said that the draft should be ready by the first week of July. Was her last week.
Last week of July, okay.
By the first week of July, that's the first week.
Oh, first week, okay. Okay, and then in terms of transfer knowledge, that Brian will have all that.
Yeah. I've got it. That's probably all the information.
River God Church, I don't know. Do we have any discussion on that last meeting?
We're gonna try to find out if the board of trustees. Or whatever, that would get- I know.
No, I haven't.
No, my plan is like to approach him as soon as possible. The plan was by a team of us to go over there and talk to them.
Where does that sit? What's the next step? And
Well, we kind of talked about possibly myself, John, two of us going over there and just talking to the pastor and see what it is with it. Not knowing if they have a board of trustees or not. Okay. That was the biggest concern. And I've looked in the nonprofits and I don't see anything in regards to trustees.
And kind of where I was at, what I had heard is that the pastor was consistently giving the same answer.
Correct.
And so, I mean, the way I approach things is let's ask somebody else.
Right.
If we're,
Yeah.
but I don't think we know who somebody else is.
Okay.
What do you think we filed under the Secretary of State for that maybe?
So I looked.
Oh, you did look there, okay.
Yeah, and I spent, 45 minutes doing Google searching and didn't like up with anything.
So I think it's a one-man.
It kind of sounds like it.
operation.
Well, maybe, I don't know, do you still have the redevelopment master plan at hand or?
Yes.
Maybe we can use the approval and publishing of the redevelopment master plan as a reason for a visit. To say that, we worked on this plan, part of the vision is at some point, we see something else in our spot, but, we're happy to have you as part of the community and like to talk about those options, whatever. Right? If we have a reason to knock on the door.
Yeah, I don't think that building gets used more than 4 to 5 hours a week.
Didn't someone say that they had found another location that this church could move into?
Yep, so I did talk to Gene Burwald and he does have space available at where the food shelf is now, up on the second floor. And to me, that's the other approach is, you can have your church services here, but you're also, the mission is to maybe help the food shelf and connect to together. Be an incentive for them to be a part of that. And that was just a few weeks ago that Gene said that there is space available. He'd be willing to work with them. Give them a good deal. It's ADA accessible. The workforce center for millions of dollars into that building. So it's all updated. Everything's there.
Lisa, can you pan down to the map?
Any idea what page I could just type them up there?
We did have a meeting with Kevin Fuller, John and I.
Not this one.
But his needs are pretty
36.
needy. Not needy, but
Well, here's,
he would like to possibly put something sooner than later.
No,
Well, we own the property on the other side. But we're trying to go.
do you really?
Yeah, That's the EDA, that's what Don was saying.
Yeah.
Finally found out the property.
I thought you meant you owned it.
No,
I was gonna say, I don't know if I can negotiate. You're pretty tough.
no,
Oh, the old gas station.
I think it's, very important for us to move this forward. And I want to do it right the first time when I approach them, but
That doesn't, it's gotta be one earlier.
well, and he's kind of elderly, isn't he? I think what they said is,
Yeah, he's in, he's, coming up on his last year or two as the pastor. I just don't think he wants to undertake a role like this, and have to relocate. I kind of wants to ride it out. Is my opinion on it. The problem with the piece though is that, we use the parking lot. We actually own it.
So it'd be part of
We have to
downtown
maintain
core.
it.
I think
And if
that's what
somebody
this
else
was.
later comes in and they do something, then we have a real problem with
This is
parking.
council.
Right.
So if I gotta do something in the next couple of years, I would say by the, if I set it off as far as I possibly could, because we're busting at the seams in there, I have to do something if I want to.
So it
Can you
would,
remind me, is there a formal parking, like a shared parking agreement? Or is
Yes,
it
it would be
handshake?
this zone.
No, it's a document.
So we don't have a blow up of this transition zone. Okay. How do we speak to the transition zone?
Basically, it's the downtown core is kind of,
The driver and then,
once you get into the purple stuff, it's more specific to, this is what the downtown is going to look like, the traditional two-story buildings with transition zones, more like with the Lily.
am I even in the right spot?
Yeah, it's,
That's not,
that Henry, the street name is wrong, so that's a correction that I have.
oh, yeah, I was gonna say that's not telling.
I think there's a couple of places where the street names got wonky.
Well, maybe after we publish this document, though, it's a good opportunity to go have a conversation, find out, what opportunities may or may not exist, and maybe we just ask what our, who's in charge other than you.
well, and I think it's a fair question, if he's the one telling us no, is there,
Are you the
are you the decision?
right? Or that
you would think so.
That's what we've been trying to figure out.
All right, well, and again, I
So I was hoping, Robert, if you could come and back there down there,
a member.
a member of the church, and then do some stuff. I'm still a minister. What's that? I'm still a minister. Oops.
Next, fire.
You walked right into that
Whoa,
one.
whoa, that was a trap door.
All right, well, I think that we'll keep this item under old business, but let's table it until after publishing of the.
Because I don't know any members in there. I don't.
I don't even know how many of them live in North
We'll table it till after publishing of the development master plan, and then.
I think it's a good idea.
I think
they got a living document, show them that this
Right.
is what our plans are.
And, we're planning for the future, and we need to have that discussion. So, okay. Any other discussion on that item? Okay, 2395 Margaret, those are the properties right across the street. John.
Yeah, so I don't remember when now, it was February. The two gentlemen, Jackson and Justin, I believe, from JV Bank came in and gave me a proposal. I mentioned to you, my opinion, that it's best practices, they always try to get more than one proposal, just so you have some things to compare and contrast. I have been in communication with a couple of gentlemen from a development company called Ellis Black. And I believe that they're going to be making a proposal as well.
I have.
There's another company called North Bay that expressed some interest as well. But I have not heard as much from them recently. So I don't know if they continue to be interested. I've given Brian the access to the contacts. You know, I would expect both, well, I mean, the JV Bank guys, I think are just trying to be as patient as they can. They would like to grow. So my hope is that a month from now, at the EDA meeting, that the Ellis Black proposal would be completed. And we could take a look at both and choose which one to start working on.
Can we ask, to have staff get in touch with Ellis Black Development, find out if they can have, you know, some concept presentation, something for us for the July meeting. And then we can, at a minimum, I guess, stack that against what we've seen from Baby Bang. I don't know. I know with on the Lilly property, I know that we, how did we do that, John? Was that an open forum? Was that with council?
Well,
That open forum?
yeah, so it was two things. First of all, it was just a presentation.
Yeah.
And was it joint with the EDA, and then the chair, was the city council, chair and vice chair of the EDA, and chair and vice chair of the planning commission. That's how we had done it.
Okay.
And then after that, the EDA selected a preferred developer out of the two.
And I think that seems like a smart and reasonable process. It may be the same for this. So to kind of move the ball along if possible, if Ellis Black had something at least preliminary in advance we look at, and then maybe try to schedule something in July to do something similar with both Ellis Black and the JD Bank Group. I think it'd be good to get feedback from others, and then we can bring it back to the EDA meeting. So
Would this be a separate meeting in addition to the regular schedule?
I think it would have to be probably at this point, because.
That's how we did it last time.
Yeah, because you have to schedule I don't remember when we did that. Did we do that in conjunction with the council meeting?
No, we did it right after.
Right.
So this meeting occurred at 3,
Okay,
and then the joint meeting happened at 4:30
okay.
or something like that.
Was there like a
4:35.
workshop or something scheduled?
No, it was a special
It was, okay.
night. Then this is operating from memory.
Yeah.
So,
But I think that would, I think that that's very helpful because it's not just, you know, the EDA in their own bubble deciding what's best, and it gives the opportunity for comments from planning and city council.
And yeah, it's something I've been doing for a long time. You know, without doing that, at some point in time, the folks on the planning commission might say something like, well, this is the first we've ever seen this.
Right.
And it just provides that opportunity earlier on.
So reach out to Ellis Black, assuming they're still interested, get some concept stuff in,
I'll shoot something to Ellis Black today or tomorrow.
and then get
And I'll see
and then try to get a joint meeting on the calendar. If we could do it after next month's EDA meeting, that would probably be ideal.
Excuse me, this is not a line for me, but I'm wondering if it makes sense to have us work with either WSP or the Port Authority for some of the tasks that need to be assigned to staff.
Yeah, I can rewind that, or I can address that maybe under executive director's report. Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion on those properties? I think it'd be a good idea. I think they're kind of ripe. The properties are ripe to move, and we've got some interested parties, so I think we're wise to get something. Item B, engagement letters for Baker Tilly.
Well, it wasn't Baker Tilly, and this is something I brought up back in, I don't know, February. And I think it could just wait for a new executive director. So the city's law firm the Stormatic works for. Blank on the firm. Knudsen, Campbell Knudsen. They do not represent cities in TIF or in bond issuances. And so we've been using Taft law in a woman named Mary Ipple. And Mary is very good. She's well known in the industry. So I was suggesting, again, best practices, it'd be good to get a just a quote from her, her hourly wages, her payment requirements, and then a quote from another company. Again, I don't think now is the time to do that with my departure. I would just keep working with Mary Ipple since she has some history here, and change as little as possible at this time.
Okay, and so is she currently working on the Lily?
I've alerted her to Lily.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
And the other law firm I had suggested, there's a law firm called Canadian Graven that also does this kind of work.
So, Brian, I think that from an EDA standpoint, vis-a-vis the Lily project or Lily property and the proposed development there in our current engagement letter, I think we want to make sure that we've got a firm engagement with whoever's going to do our TIF consulting on that city to keep that ball moving. So otherwise that could really slow down the train.
No, we're good. We're good on that.
So it's good.
Yeah, I was talking about maybe making a change.
Oh, okay, so they are formally engaged on that.
They are.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
They're the status quo. And I was suggesting maybe looking into doing something other than the status quo. Now I'm saying, now's not the time.
Okay, so that's out. So really that's done.
There's nothing to be done on
Nothing,
that.
nothing to discuss. Okay. Executive Director report.
Yeah, so I did talk with Port Consulting about the fact that they were engaged back in like November or so of last year to help the EDA kind of do the day-to-day staffing and assist with project management. At that time, I'm trying to remember who the executive director, what his name was, but he has since resigned. So when I talked to Port Consulting, they feel they're overextended. And they really don't feel like they can provide those services. So I talked with Michaela Hewitt at Baker Tilly, who does the city, all the city's TIF work and the bonding work for a financial aspect, and asked her if she would be willing to play a project management role in addition to the TIF stuff. And she said she would. I asked her specific to Lily, so I didn't really get into details about other projects such as the property across the street. But she's willing to do that. She feels like she has the time to do that. Baker Tilly.
And what type of, project management, obviously, a pretty broad term, what type of services? Potentially.
Helping to kind of be a bridge between the EDA and the developer, and between the EDA and this Mary Ipple, the attorney, on putting together the development agreement. And on just the, when the EDA meets like this, there might be a punch list that says, well, we'd like these 4 things addressed before next month's meeting. And then Michaela would shepherd that punch list.
So that's really could otherwise be described as a staff supplement.
Yes.
WSB does provide those services as well.
Yeah, but I think they do. But I do think that when you get into the financial and the TIF component of it, it's a specialty.
Michaela is very knowledgeable about TIF. redevelopment agreement.
So do we have to, does there have to be an engagement for that?
I asked her that. She felt like the existing contract with the city just allows her to bill hourly.
It does.
That was her feeling, yes. She said she'd be willing to carve out a separate proposal just for this, if that's something we wanted, but she's fine operating under the hourly. She already has.
So I guess a couple thoughts. One of the things about port consulting, you know, not necessarily specific to the Lilly project, but about the engagement with them is, you know, they're really in-depth understanding of grants and all things that are free money opportunities out there for development, redevelopment, cleanup, et cetera. You know, I thought that was a very attractive piece of being engaged with the port at some point. If we don't have a person on staff that's, you know, effective for that stuff because of the timelines that are involved, if you don't have somebody watching it, miss the application and everything else. But that's kind of a separate issue from the Lilly specifically keeping that project moving. So we, as an EDA, how is that structured? Are we have the development agreement with Laval's team, is that correct?
We currently have a memorandum of understanding.
Okay, but with the intent of getting to a development agreement.
You know, the MOU says that would happen by the end of the year. And that's what Jim Lavelle pushed for. I think just to give himself some wiggle room. I think his hope is actually that it would happen much sooner than that.
Okay. And then on the TIF component, once it's brought to bear, ultimately that's for council approval, not for EDA. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, you know, there could be a role for the EDA to make a recommendation.
Okay. And then as part of all of this, I believe we have some expenses that we are attempting to recapture. Is that roughly outlined in that memorandum of understanding?
Yeah, there are two components to that. One is there are costs that we've asked the developer to reimburse us for, half of Port Authority's costs that were incurred to date, and they have done that already.
Okay, so that's good.
And then the ongoing costs for the TIF analysis and for our legal costs of putting together the development agreement. There are probably going to be other costs that the EDA will incur. You know, and so I have sent Finance Director Dan Winnick an email and CC Brian suggesting that he set up what's known as an interfund loan so that the EDA can loan itself money to pay for costs associated with the Lilly building. Then when the TIF district is established, you know, depending on what's negotiated with the developer, the EDA can retain up to 10% of the increment for administrative costs. Well, a lot of the administrative costs are, and this is 10% annually for the life of the district, which could be up to 26 years. Well, a lot of the EDA's administrative costs are borne on the front end. And so if you've got this interfund loan, you know, in year 10 of the TIF district, when you really maybe won't have that much administrative costs are incurring, you're still paying back this interfund loan with interest for the costs you incurred on the front end.
So, and that ultimately is maybe a concern of mine on behalf of the EDA, that we don't, with your departure, John, we don't lose sight of that. Brian and I, John's got more background than that. So I'm just hoping that we maybe have captured that a little bit in our minutes today and in the transfer knowledge of your departure, that we just don't lose sight of what we were trying to do there as an EDA, because part of getting, sticking our nose into some of these things is the opportunity to, help, create funds for the EDA, get paid for our efforts, if you will, so we have those funds to do it yet again down the line, or do other things that are appropriate.
Yeah, and I told the city council, and I'll tell the EDA this as well. I'd like to be the best ex-employee that the EDA's ever had. And so if, anybody wants to contact me in the future and ask me these questions, I'd be absolutely happy to.
Can you run through that harebrained scheme?
There, I would
You
say,
say it so eloquently, it just sounds perfect.
I've looked back at the TIF districts that North St. Paul's had in the past, and my opinion is North St. Paul has left a lot of money on the table that could have been collected by this community, whether it's in administration or what's called pooling.
Right, and so that's the hope, that we don't lose sight of that. I think, a lot of sense when it's been initially laid out. That's what we're ultimately trying to do. So. Okay.
So you're saying Michaela would be kind of the point person
She would.
for this?
Yeah.
Michaela's with the city.
Yeah.
And Michaela's as knowledgeable, if not more knowledgeable than me.
So I think it'd probably be worthwhile, particularly, at least for next meeting, and then we'll see frequency, if we could ask her to attend, even if it's just online, for any discussions, Q&A specific to that, so we know how it's going. If we're laying the staff working. John, or still on? Anything else?
Well, I talked last month about hiring a community development director that would be serving the EDA quite a bit. I don't know that a decision's been made on whether to pursue that or to wait for a new city manager. So that's the decision's being made by somebody other than me.
So under recommendation from we kind of talked with Craig Waldron as a incoming city manager, they would typically like to pick their own staff, especially a new hiree like that. And you get somebody new coming in and really they don't have a boss in direction of what their job is going to be doing. Felt that maybe we could just hold off right now until we do have the
I can appreciate the position, but as an EDA, at least for myself as EDA chair, I can say that we waited 18 months under that same premise. I mean, there's just a lot to be done, and it's and it's not fair to wear staff out. Obviously, I mean, they got without additional EDA.
We'll get to it. We've got resources as well.
It's just
I would say on a Lilly property, I'm super optimistic that that's going to get done. And the reason for my optimism is the confidence I have in Jim Lavelle. I'd never met him before this process started, but when I get into a room with him and we talk about things like tax increment financing, or we talk about planning issues, and Brandy's met with him on planning issues, he really knows what he's doing. And I've worked on a lot of projects with developers that didn't know what they were doing. And it's a lot of work for staff. On projects where the developer does know what they're doing, staff is really, staff's better off just getting out of the way.
And I'll add to my, Craig Waldron is coming on board for temporary. He'll be helping out with Brian, specific projects if we need him to work on. He will also be involved with that. So that was the other reason with him coming on board. We do have some resources along with, John will be able to give us some sort of thing.
Are there any interns in the city right now, or do we have any opportunity for interns yet this summer? Yeah, I mean, beyond specifically the Lilly development or any other specific things we're undertaking, and it's just, I do think back to, a number of years ago when the EDA was in its infancy, and, we had, Nate Hall was started. And, one of the things that he did was tremendous. I mean, he just scoured the opportunities for grants, this and that, and helped us, get these grant submissions in. And we brought a lot of money into the city and gave us a lot of opportunity to do some things that maybe it's had. And so I just feel like we, without having somebody doing that kind of work and being in tune with those opportunities, I think we missed out. And these cycles are so long. I'm not getting in front of them. That's problematic from my perspective. But, and I'm not saying we're even eligible for grants or anything, but we are. We should be trying to get, and from a council standpoint, I would think that that's important as well, right? I mean, to not have to put some of these things in the capital improvement plan, you get paid for it, under grant effort. We talk more about that. John, anything else for your portion of the report? Okay. We don't have, the treasurer is not present today, so we'll skip over that component. Unless, does anybody have any specific questions? I think we're in reasonably decent shape in that regard. Chair report, I guess that maybe the one thing I did want to talk about, I did get an update. I did talk to Lavelle. I wanted to make sure that his team was comfortable, with the path of everything moving. One thing that I was made aware of is they've at least reached a preliminary agreement with John Pisha and his ownership group on that building on the corner to envelop that into the proposed development. So that development now, if you guys are unaware, the intent is for that development to go all the way down to the corner and remove that coffee lot building. I don't know all the particulars of the deal, but it sounds like it's going to happen. And so I think that's a good thing. I think that's it's good for the development. I think it's good for the city. There's a number of birds. So, and we'll continue to keep track of that. So, the only, I guess, the other thing I have is not maybe more questions as opposed to updates. If anybody in the room knows, is parking lot work is going. Does anybody have maybe an update on the status of that?
Parking lot over there.
No, I have no idea.
We're gonna get that first look done on the south side of the lot here. I'm waiting on the east north side of the lot. On the process of putting the conduit and on one basis for the south.
Was that was a bid job? Let's see, that was bid on. And then we're getting the EV stations in there as part of it,
Not until next year,
but sub-ins or something.
well, we start with one as a fuel charging station, potentially.
And I know what we do with the bike rack count. Do we have bike racks as part of that plan?
But to me, that's part of the downtown plantings and. Right now, I think those bike racks did have that. Because we put in those ones.
Like stolen.
No, I think they're public works.
Public works.
You know, so I think it, as we do the downtown,
There's
what do you call it?
no streetscape
Streetscape. The part of that plan should be
to get some bike racks back. Yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily within our purview as EDA, but you know, whoever, I guess, carried forward to council or something that, you know, we should have some bike racks out there somewhere. I think it's part of the vision that we're trying to create for the city. People want to ride a bike in town. They have a place to go. The other question I had was, you know, the Max Diners home. I thought I saw an opening date. Oh, that'll be in yours. Okay. Mr. Mayor.
I have update on the Max Diner. It looks like June 24th was going to be the soft opening. Now it's being pushed further out. July 5th and 6th would be potential soft opening, and he's asking for myself what groups to invite for that. I will not be open to the public, and my recommendation would be city staff department heads, finance, the public works, electric, fire chief, police chief, the deputy clerk, because I worked a lot with her, communications person, planning commission, the EDA, and it might be a few residents that would be involved, that were helping with the a lot of the historical part, and then the developers. Everybody else, I think, should be invited for that. You know, he wants to limit it to a manageable amount too.
Seems like a busy day.
Yeah. But some of these, you know, overlap too, the planning commission. They have council members on it, the council has.
What was it?
July 5th and 6th. Was it holiday weekend? Yeah.
Yeah, right after.
I asked him how many employees he's hiring. He said 45.
What?
45 FTEs.
Five to 8 full time.
We have them hired.
He said that North St. Paul has been very favorable for hiring. He's getting a really good response. His Lakeville restaurant, he said he hasn't got the response that he has here. And he's pretty excited about what he's getting here. But yeah, he said 45.
He opens up and I don't have any employees.
As I say, where are they?
Yeah.
They'll be on the rooftop.
He's been sabotaging me.
John, where are you really going?
So if you can think of anybody else, city, you know, you thought about the whole city staff, but I thought that's not. It'd be manageable for that. I did get a call from the broker of the Louis building. He's asking about the post office, whether or not that the city would want to sell as a city. And I said, to be honest with you, I would not entertain getting rid of the post office.
That's on the register. I think.
I just thought I'd bring it up and pay attention to that. He's looking at another piece of the puzzle for, you know, expanding the Louis building even further. And I don't know, I don't think it's coming from Mobile. I think it's just coming from him.
Oh, you're not talking to broker.
The broker approached me, Tony Schwartz,
Oh, okay.
in regards to the post office.
So it's a non-starter. But I can tell you it's a non-starter. We don't need to
That's
know.
what I said I'd bring it up here and
So that would be 5
You'll
years.
have protesters.
Never try to buy a post office or a railroad.
yeah. Other than that, I'd just like to thank John for your help in the EDA. It's unfortunate. I understand.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad that I'm losing. There's a lot of good work to be done here that needs to get done. So I wish all the luck.
Thank you for your
Okay, reports from Councilman Member Cole.
I really have nothing other than to bring up one comment from last meeting, just to figure out, is there an interest? Knick-Knack is up for sale. I know that we had entertained a bid at one point in time, it was up for auction. But it's back up for sale, so I don't know if there's still an interest in the EDA purchasing the site for parking development.
Robert's opinion is yes, but not at the number.
Okay, you're aware of the number?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we let it go for a while.
Okay.
And I think that we got back end on that.
All right.
Anyone else?
That was the only thing I had, because it wasn't in old business. I just wanted to. I won't bring it up again.
Do you want to mention Councilmember about
A council member that might be present here brought up at the last council meeting that the EDA take over responsibility of the community center after we determine what's going to happen to it, where the EDA would be the owner and landlord of the property as opposed to the city.
We talked about that.
We had talked about it. There was an
Isn't there some
interest.
Isn't there some guidelines in terms of the things that EDA can?
As long as it wasn't a community center, I think was part of the guidelines.
You know, I have to look into it. My gut reaction is that the EDA can't be a landlord.
Right, so if it's a city-owned building, parcel, what have you, we can serve as the owner of the property. Services, et cetera, but if it's providing public services, unless it's meets a certain criteria like a parking lot or something. I think there are some things that
Yeah. My short answer is I don't know. You know, I wouldn't want to guess too much. I think there's nothing in that strikes me like, oh my gosh, that's impossible. So I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah, I mean, my gut reaction on that, and I'd love to hear if anyone else has an opinion, but my gut reaction on that is I think that it is better served, not just from an EDA perspective, but from the city's perspective, if the EDA, you know, is the owner of that building, because that, you know, long term, I mean, that is right for redevelopment. And I don't think that the EDA will get, maybe it's, you know, caught up in some of the use a technical term gibberish that's gone on down there with the rent control, and and, you know, potentially, I don't want to say make better decisions, that's not the right thing, but make decisions that are geared more towards the highest and best use of that parcel. So that's my thoughts.
How much parking is in that building?
Too little.
Too little. Yeah, and there are challenges. I mean, you know, the fiber backbone of the city is not building. Okay, you know, so it's not like you can just razz it. Say here's a development. There's some headaches going on down there.
Given given the timeline that we know we have to work on, there's also things that can be done between now and the end of the lease with the current lease with the library.
Right, and I think, at the end of the day, the reality is the disposition of that building is ultimately going to fall to the council. But I do think that there can be some significant efforts, to the city. If it's, being active, more active.
Is it possible to lease it to a medical device company that's in need of space?
Very possible.
I don't know. As long as you don't, but.
How many spots is there for parking? I mean, is there 10, 15 maybe?
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, I don't hold me to this, I think there's a shared parking agreement. That's in
Oh, with Franklin.
Franklin Center. But I don't know that it's given a ton of use.
There's still quite a bit of parking. People park.
Yeah, so, yes, I think the EPA would encourage that. Process for that.
Discussion. I think that's worth exploring.
We'll pay $1. Pay the council $1.
And I'll let you double your investment. I'll buy it for 2.
Okay, anything else?
That was it for me. Thank you.
It does.
Kevin?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I got one thing to say.
Yes.
I went into town Friday night for the car show. And I'm impressed with the new sidewalks. Holy cow, you can walk. It's the first time I've walked on them. And usually there's people, so I was impressed. Yeah, it needed it badly. And I was impressed. I really thought, wow.
Now we just gotta get the street down, some planting, some
Yeah.
trees, get some.
They'll walk over them. But no, the sidewalks, the unevenness is gone. Everything is
Nice.
It was nice walking. You could walk and you could look. You didn't have to look where you were walking. No stumbles.
Plus visually from the street,
Yes,
it's much more effective.
yes, yes.
So much better. There's no comparison.
No, that's good to hear. And
The city should.
yeah, that's good to hear. And I think that, that just emphasizes, creating that connection between the improved parking lot, behind Luther's joint and whatever we wind up doing.
I don't know if there's any plans to keep going with the sidewalks, but I think it really cleans up the town.
I think it's supposed to go all the way down to Helen. So, good. Archie.
Something else, is I really do like the sidewalks, and I think citizen and not just really enhances the city.
And I tell you what, even, enhancing just your place with the outside patio, that's a big deal. I mean, it really adds a lot to the character.
Now it's official.
Now it's official.
Soon to be interim.
Welcome back.
Happy to be back. That's great. Perfect. Lisa.
I did have a couple things on here. In our last meeting, it was brought up that we should have a to-do list. So I tried to cover some things from the agendas that are in the packet. And if there's anything that sticks out to anybody, I know you had asked for people to look at the minutes. I didn't get any feedback on that at all. But if anything comes up, feel free to shoot me an email with anything that we're not aware of. And then I also included where we're at with our to-do list. So that's in the packet as well. So we'll try to keep a running list as we go projects so they don't fall off the
Yep, I think-
agenda again. And then I do have one other thing that I just wanted to inquire about, because I've kind of gone back and forth with this, but at one point, the downtown furniture was a topic of discussion. I don't know if it was, I think we briefly spoke about it in here, but I know the planning commission was tasked with that to figure out a plan. And they've made a decision, and does that have to go back to city council now for approval? I mean, it's not a, nothing's really set in stone. They're just making a recommendation that it's, you know, durable, commercial grade, made of weather resistant materials. And then there's 4 different kinds of materials to choose from, and then there's a few pictures. So does that have to go back to city council? But then I also heard that they're not supposed to have the outdoor seating. Did you have to talk to Newman's and let them know that they can't put tables out there? I guess I'm just
So
very
right now, there's no
conflicting.
ordinance for them to put furniture out there. But when we do pass an ordinance, we do pass something.
Okay, so that's in the
that would be-
works.
That would be something that they would have to.
Okay, so I will plan to get that back on the city council agenda then.
I think you should hold off to checks, because I've been tasked with looking at the sidewalk cafe.
Okay.
Situation.
Okay,
So whatever mechanism is the approval.
great. Thank you. Okay. That's all I have.
Good, Mr. Stark. Anything else? Okay, anyone? So, all right, great. We'll just have to understand a motion.
Third,
All those in favor? Aye.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. The meeting's adjourned at 4:32.
cupcakes.
You have a sugar high for 4 hours.
Randy's follow-up, do I need to get back on with you with Soren's? I had a mail yesterday.
On the sidewalk thing or on the ADA thing?
On both.
I don't think you need to follow
See ya.
up with me.
Good to see you.
Question.
I wasn't heavily involved in the discussion. It sounded like.
So
Pat
the
at least resistance for
Rotary
that
has
was
put the
just-
sign in down at the Rotary
That's not the
Park.
direction I want to go, but
Part of their
I'm not
grant,
sure who the parties
you
are with
need
the.
ownership of
members
that
of the SOAR.
sign
Sounds good.
thank you.
You're welcome.
for the city. Mighty. They want a letter from beneficiary organizations, stating that such ownership and maintenance of assets pertaining to subject grants. So they're getting all this money to put that sign in. Yeah, as part of that grant writing, I need a letter from us stating. that we accept that sign.
See if Joe, officer, can that.
It should be on our letterhead.
Joe's the most familiar with this.
Okay.
of everybody. I haven't heard. I'm sure. It'd be a bonus.
But they need this, has to be in by Thursday.
You want to just go down there, I'll make a photocopy of this, Joe?
You can just take this.
I'm sure she puts something together.
It's
It's gonna be short and sweet.
in the past. I think he sent me something that's happened in the past.
I mean, I think it could just say,